So how you doing, Adam? Thanks for being here. I know you probably had to cover that Canadian CPI, so you had a little crunch time when we made this day.
Yeah.
You probably didn't know the Canadian CPI would be at the time we were
Well, hey,
putting it
listen,
together.
buddy, the whole financial world stops for Canadian CPI, and
Uh,
a little bit on the hot side there. So Tiff Macklem is trying to keep to his hawkish chops, and
well,
certainly
for
got.
today, the guys does more flips than hamburgers, right?
Well, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about him. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but
All right.
professionally, he's missed the mark pretty much all the way along.
We were talking about this, Adam. It seems like central bankers everywhere they're they don't instill a lot of confidence. I don't care what country they are from. It feels like they're they don't know any more than we do.
Well, yeah, and you know what? The one thing we do know that they don't seem to know in most of the world is that they're just going to follow the Fed. I mean, you see this pivot from the Fed, and then you have Lagarde, who has a
Yeah.
terrible economy, plunging inflation, trying to say that they are not even thinking about hiking at all when Powell's already opened the door. And I just don't get that. Like
Okay.
it's like we know what they're going to do before they are, and it's going to be the same in Canada. And so, we'll see. I mean, 1 month of hotter inflation, though, might you had to mix the messaging up here a little bit into January. So,
I think
the
they should
market.
strongly consider getting you to head the Central Bank of
Well,
Canada.
listen, buddy, I'm
I
gathering
mean, I
together. We're gonna do a letter writing campaign, I think, here.
all right, and I do want to start with Canada too because you're a USD CAD bull last time we got
Yeah.
together. And I know that's, 3 months ago and things can change in 24 hours. Has your view changed? Because it doesn't seem to be able to catch much of a bid since it peaked at about 139.
139. Yeah, it got up there, it got moving. And so what we had, there's been a big shift in the US dollar, right?
Right,
Right across the world. And that's been
right.
the driver, not so much the CAD side. We
Okay.
when I look at the state of the global economy and watching the data, there's a lot of stumbling. Europe is stumbling. Canada is starting to turn, maybe not as fast as I thought it would. Canadian housing is definitely buckled. I mean,
Okay.
there's this situation right now where there's no supply coming on, and sellers can't move homes when they sell, and there are no buyers at all. And then so sellers are just kind of giving up and taking down listings. But in the springtime, and especially if the Bank of Canada keeps rates where they are now, then we'll see it come apart, and we will see the Canadian dollar underperform in a big way.
Okay.
So the longer they kind of hang on to this hawkish stance, the more they're going to have to cut later. And what might save it is if they pivot and and we are seeing market rates come down, so there is a little bit of relief there, but it's not going to be nearly enough.
Well, it seems like the commodity currencies are outperforming the European currencies, most other currencies. Do you think it's because there's an underlying bid um, in commodities? Could it be that China might be recovering? I look at the FXI, it doesn't look good to me. And I know you've always worried about what could happen in China. We were talking about that this morning. Do you think that are their problems are going to deepen next year, and that the globe feels the effects this year more, this coming year more than this year?
Yeah, well, I don't really see it deepening. I mean, they have so much optionality around stimulus, and they're just trying to flush out the property market. And I
Okay,
know they don't want to add more debt, but they have zero inflation in China right now, negative inflation on the year over year.
right.
And then they'd be feeling some of the inflationary impacts of commodity prices in the last number of months as well. So they have that, and I think that's an upside risk for something like the Australian dollar, which I think is going to do
Yeah,
well next year.
yeah.
Um, and it could bring along a lot of other things with it. The oil's got its kind of own market right now with OPEC, so China shifting gears maybe adds 1 million barrels a day of demand, but there's certainly the supply there to match it. So I don't know if that kind of China commodity currency complex really goes belong beyond the Australian dollar.
Okay.
That's kind of the way I
The
see it
chart
shaping up.
looks great. Chart looks great on the
Well,
Aussie.
you wonder how washed out sentiment is on China because you look at some of the Chinese equities
Yeah.
and it's unbelievable how cheap they are, and they just keep falling.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. The
um,
FXI, BABA, just a few things that I keep an eye on. And, we could take a look. But China under pressure, um, that to me, I think that, if they have problems, it's hard, they could pull us out of a recession, why can't they pull us into one?
well,
You
yeah,
know?
I mean, it's fair enough. I mean, it's not. I mean, over time, if you have a kind of weak economy, I think problems build up. And it must be building up below the surface in China. I mean, it has just been such a tough one to call because you kind of take that playbook from elsewhere, and anywhere else would be easing in some kind of way right now. But
Yeah.
China has its own sort of plan
Yeah.
here right now,
Yeah. So
and
there's
it
BABA, and here's the FXI. So while we're make threat, well, the
everybody.
Nasdaq's made a new all-time high. Look at this. So
Yeah.
I mean, it can threaten the October 22 lows. If we ever had a correction here in the US, I don't see people just rotating into China. We might even go for these lows. I just
Right.
can't
That
see that being positive for uh, global growth, what's happening in China.
well, especially if you layer it on with Europe, which will be lucky to grow at all in 2024 again.
Okay. I'm glad you
Uh,
segued there because you were talking about all the negative fundamentals in Europe, and all the data has borne it out. But do you think that? And you said, why would I want to be long Europe, be long
yeah.
euro? Is that shifting for you a little bit
I
as we
mean, not at
start
all.
pushing up?
I think there's only two trades in Europe, and it's short and on the sidelines. They're just not any sort of dynamism, right? They're like the AI, North American invention, right? Entirely.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and the first contribution that Europe made to it, and they were patting themselves on the back in a Twitter post the other day, was we're the first region in the world to regulate it. And you think, well,
okay.
that's just Europe, isn't it? There you at some point you need something to invest in beside, okay, yeah, the P's got really cheap. I mean, the DAX sort of blew up. Um,
The DAX
Europe,
did.
energy has obviously been what it's been. The weather's been great. If this cold stretch was in Europe instead of Beijing, things might look a little different today. But I mean, it's a pretty dead cat bounce as far as I'm
Are you
concerned.
worried about maybe supply chain issues with WTI, with what's happening in the Red Sea?
There's a lot of pieces on that chessboard in trying to figure out who wants what to happen. The Saudis and the Houthis seem to be trying to make a peace there. They're treating this as sort of a
What they
piracy
said
issue.
is Houthi, they just sending missiles, and on the side it says "Peace on Earth, goodwill towards men"
Well,
on the
and
drones.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a little shocked that America didn't drop a few bombs anyway. Uh, so
Yeah,
I don't know if they think they can sort this out with this operation. I forget what it's called. They announced there yesterday.
yeah,
It's like 32 nations trying to get involved together, which is I like the look of that at least because nobody, obviously, every nation in the world doesn't want this area blocked.
yeah,
But can they really, block it? I mean, I guess they'll try this as probably plan A. I'm sure there's a plan B and a plan C, but
yeah.
uh,
I've
I'm a little worried right now.
and you know what else is interesting? I was reading yesterday that because of the immigration crisis we have here in the U.S. at the southern border, they had to shut down a couple of railway points. And the railroad guys are saying, we understand this is an emergency, but it's going to screw up the supply chain.
Well, the
Because
lesson of COVID was really how fragile the supply chains are. And I don't know if
yeah,
anyone's done anything to fix that. You look at,
yeah,
maybe inventories are running a little fatter than they did. But that's always tough to read through in aggregate data. You would hope at the micro level, the companies are running a little fatter on inventories, but instead of 2 days of inventories, it might be three, which isn't much of a cushion. So yeah, that fragility certainly hasn't been solved, nor in the financial system. I mean, remember what happened to treasuries during the um, at the start of COVID, when treasuries, you'd
oh,
think they would have been rallying, and they imploded. And and all these basis trades, and they've kind of, the Fed kind of fretted about it for a little bit, wrote a couple reports, and nothing's changed. The leverage, well, it's just getting piled on again.
all right. Well, we have a huge rally in the bonds over the past couple months, in equities and bonds since you and I talked. Do you think that this is just a short covering or a short squeeze in bonds, or does this move have staying power?
Well, we look at you look at the Fed pricing right now, 141 basis points, which seems a little rich. They're saying 75. I mean, the market's always ahead of the Fed, so maybe it's 125 in the end, or 100. So that seems a little much, but what I think more about is sort of the regime that we're in. Are we in a low inflation regime again, or are we in a kind of 1970s sticky inflation regime, the kind of thing we were
I'll
worried
go
about?
with B. I'll go with B. How about you?
It wouldn't be your first time there, you remember. So uh, um,
Uh, I was only
I
two. I was two. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I was driving,
I
driving bad, driving badly.
yeah.
Um,
I,
so yeah,
I
okay.
think, the market is telling you pretty strongly now that we're kind of in a 2010s regime again. Low inflation, wages aren't running too away here. You've got all this disinflation in the pipeline from rents, from cars. I do worry about commodities and energy kind of coming back around, but probably not in 2024 too much. I think the market is, and I think that is important. I think that's the call you have to make in the big macro picture. And I would say that the bond market has it right here, which is good for the equities, and certainly equities in the next 2 weeks. You can't fade a Santa Claus rally. Uh, uh,
Santa Claus.
so
It started at
well,
Halloween.
it was
It
that
was a
this
Halloween
Christmas
rally.
does seem to start right after Halloween now.
Uh, I guess yeah,
The
they are
music.
selling merchandise then. So uh, I've talked to guys that say we've entered a parabolic stage in this market. And the first quarter, there's nothing to stop it from trading 6,000 S&Ps. Do you think
I
that
mean, that's a bold call. What I think
well,
I worry,
he also said maybe seven, but I didn't
maybe
want
seven,
to.
well, six at the minimum, seven
Yeah.
at the max.
Anyway, yeah,
Well, where I come down is you have like the Magnificent Seven, right? And you do get a lot of this rotation trade. For instance, nobody, say you own Facebook up, I think it's up 100% this year, Meta.
yeah,
And you don't want to own it anymore because the PE is sort of back to like max. All the Magnificent Sevens, like they're pretty much at max PE that
Here's
they, been
Google.
historically. But
Yeah,
are you going to sell it right now? Well, the reason you wouldn't sell it right now is you have a huge tax bill in April,
right.
on the capital gains. So you wait until January 1st, or you wait until T plus two, so the 30th or 29th. And I think that is my worry early in the year, is that we see this mega cap tech get sold, probably rotated into
Yeah,
something else,
cheaper
uh,
into the Russell,
into the
into the cheap
value,
stock.
which I like a lot. And I've been on here and I've talked about steel before, Dale, a
Yeah,
fair bit. And that was a pretty merry Christmas present for that U.S. Steel deal yesterday. And I think it validates a lot of the value that is there in industrials. It was trading at what, 17 a month
yeah.
before the takeout and sold at 55. So they're certainly not the only ones. I mean, there's a bit of an industrial policy thing going on there in the US. A lot of factory building on chips and IRA and infrastructure. Um, but I think that rotation trade is more of a straightforward one to me than saying things are going to moon. And there's
Okay.
a lot of value in different parts of the world. So
And
there
it'd
might
be
be
a great
some.
funding source for people. You're selling expensive stocks, you're raising cash, and you're buying, value, or, even the regional banks have recovered.
Yeah, well, that
Quite
would be
dramatic.
one where it could probably make its way into. I mean, Bill Gross has called a pretty good game on that out in
On what,
California.
the regionals?
Yeah, he was even naming names there probably right at the end of October.
Huh. Okay. Bill Gross still has it then, because
He's got it back, and he's been relaxing for a couple years, and that
yeah.
is
Well, he's been fighting with his neighbor, and they've been suing each
that
other.
was the
So
last I'd
maybe,
heard of him.
it's settled. But you know what? I would be careful with the regionals here. Look at
Like
this. So
it's run, right? It's
yeah,
run.
it's run. Now
But
I
I
don't know.
mean, if they're pretty beaten up, like and if the other like there's, I think the value can run, Dale. You look at home builders, I mean,
Oh
record
yeah,
highs. I know you were talking
parabolic.
about home
Yeah,
building before,
yeah,
and the margins are unbelievable right now because prices are higher. Like lumber's come way back down. I mean, they were barking a
yeah,
lot about that,
yeah,
and I think it'll go back up. But right now, the margins are great. People want because they can get a buy down into the 4% mortgage here now in the US for 3 years or whatever the home builder offers. And there's no supply coming from the and if you do sell your home, it gets sold to a corporation. So there's no single family supply. Copper's interesting.
yeah. I know you're a long-term copper bull. So I mean, it
Well,
looked like it was breaking down. That was before the market turned, but sure looks pretty good now. That kind of builds a case for Aussie and maybe a China recovery. What do you
it's
think?
two things, right? I don't know if you saw the story in Panama. So it's like
Oh
1.4%
yeah,
of global supply. And that's this Cobre Panama mine, and it's gone. Like the Panama just decided to shut it down, which is they
what
may
what's
come
going
back.
on with what's going on with these land grabs? Makes you kind of nervous to buy any kind of mining company. They put in billions of dollars, and I talked to a guy who lives in Panama in the mountains. James Henry
I've heard
Anderson.
the name. Yeah.
All right, and he was surprised, but he talked about investing in miners. You really have to be careful because uh, mines are developed and then governments repo them or
Yeah.
tax them a lot.
Yeah. That's happening and it was, for all resource extraction really. And it puts these really low multiples on anybody in the space really, and especially anyone in like Latin America or Africa or honestly anywhere it seems now is fair game. Um, and and it's going to curb supply. I mean, right now, everybody knows there's going to be a lack of copper come about 2026, and the trade is like, how long are you willing to wait for what could be copper going to say 12 or 10, and the
Yeah,
leverage on a miner on going from 4 to like, a copper miner right now might be making like 50 cents a pound. So if you go to 10, I mean, it's all profit, right? So now you're making 550 a pound. So it's easily 10x. Um, and it's how long you're willing to wait for that. Now that mine in Panama getting shut down obviously brings that a little bit closer and also takes a lot of the supply out of the pipeline.
yeah,
That might have been sort of like I think a lot of people don't understand how long it takes to bring a mine to production, to
yeah,
find the resource, the permitting. I mean, it is the most difficult permitting process in like anything.
yeah.
It's a good 10
10
years
years.
at best.
Yeah,
At best, Dale, 15
yeah,
is kind of your baseline. So once there's a shortage, like you can substitute some aluminum, but nobody's substituting aluminum to like 10. It's not like copper is that big a part of the construction equation. Um,
okay. Well, there's a couple of copper issues. There's Freeport, and here's
yeah,
the
copper.
ETF on copper. Looks okay.
I mean, and then you say like China, obviously China is a drag on it. India though is a pull. I mean, India is it's doing better and better. So um I like it, and it's just really a timing issue. And my philosophy would rather be at least a little bit early. And yeah, we'll wait for the signals of when it's really going to go. But if China starts, hitting the gas pedal on stimulus, then I mean that's a really good spot to go on day one of that.
So I remember when we talked, you said to buy gold in I think it was either late November or early December, and we did have this low here in December on the 11th of December. Um, so
I mean, it's
that
holding
was
up
the
pretty good,
pullback.
right? Like that was, I mean, you had a record high on, I mean, for a few hours there,
Yeah,
and then it come back, and now you've got the Fed telling you to buy gold. You've got the seasonal trade. You've got the dollar kind of weakening off.
yeah.
The dollar can easily weaken through January or into February when the seasonal trade runs. And
Okay.
then, maybe it gets its own momentum. You see the numbers coming out of China on demand, they're good. There's the rest of the central banks are going to pivot. I don't see what's not to like about gold right now. I mean, you
And
just got to get through
silver
2100, right? You just got to get through it, and then it'll go.
and silver, same
Yeah, same.
story.
I mean, I don't.
More
I'm
like
not a gold
copper or
silver
more
guy.
like a monetary metal, like gold.
Well, it does have a little bit of that industrial side, right? With the solar
Yeah,
panels
right.
and it, I am. That's sort of the thing. Like I never really know what silver is. Is it wants to be industrial sometimes, it wants to be gold, it wants to be the gold silver ratio, but central banks don't really buy silver. So
Yeah, this is a multiple personality disorder.
that's what I
Um, so here's something that may have changed late this year. U.S. dollar yen. I know we're getting a nice bounce here. Some of the guys were selling it against 45 today. It looks if we take out 140, we could have a pretty big fall
well, I'm having a
in
hard time
U.S.
getting a
dollar
read
yen.
on the Bank of Japan.
Yeah,
Ueda now, this is I don't know how many months he's been in there. There's a lot of, BS leaks come out of there right now. Mixed signals. I mean, he was throwing it out at the start of the month. There's going to be pain around the end of the year, and then everybody ran with that, and then they walked
yeah,
it back as hard as they could, and today they did nothing. You know,
yeah.
I think the problem, like when I look at it, they have to exit this policy at some point, and
Right.
you oftentimes you either exit it when you have to or when you can. And right now they can, right? You have bond yields falling, so you can. They could get out of this. And alternatively, maybe we do get a kick up in inflation, and then they have to do it when they have to do it, and that is can be disorderly. So for me, you'd want to get away from this sooner rather than later, while the market is giving you a little bit of latitude to exit. But it's just a tough one to read. And now you have some disinflation kind of globally. Even the yen has come back, so that maybe adds a little bit as well. So maybe they just let it run. They're just scarred from low inflation, which doesn't
Okay.
seem like the world's biggest problem to me.
Okay. So why don't we wrap it with best idea and biggest surprise in 2024?
All right, best I like the Australian dollar. I mean, the
Okay.
housing market there is holding up better than elsewhere. The central bank is a bit of a mess. I mean, even they're predicting back to the top end of their inflation range in 2025.
Okay.
And that to me is not a bank that needs to cut, especially, when you see what happens with housing. I am a little optimistic on China, either this year or, the market will start to see it later in the year. Sorry,
That's a
either next
surprise.
year or late next year. And I think there's, it's low from where it's been.
Okay.
There are some risks around there, but I like that. I think the biggest surprise is that the dollar does pretty well, the US dollar. I mean, the economy in the US is still it's the best of the best. And right now the market is kind of listening to these central bankers and saying, um, and then if another surprise I think is US housing is going to boom. Um, I've been
You've
saying
been
that for a while,
bullish
and
for a
I,
long
I mean,
time,
my
years now.
conviction is only strengthened. It
Yeah.
really is. It's come through this. Home builders at all-time highs. There's barely a hiccup aside from a few markets, and the supply issue isn't going to fix itself.
Okay.
Um,
My biggest surprise, even though you didn't ask me, is that this is
I'm dying to
not
know.
the high in 10-year yields, and that we hold between here and 350, and we make another run mid-year when Powell has to do what we talked about other Fed officials had to do in the 70s. And we're going to make new highs in yields next year.
Well, that would be a booming economy. That would be
Yeah.
for sure.
Or
I
unless
don't
it's
I
just a
don't really
supply issue.
see that much below 390, even where now. I don't even know if we
Really?
get to 360. Just because,
Uh,
you got to get to three. I mean, you got to roll the front end for a while. You still get 5.4 in T-bills. I mean,
right.
3.9 isn't that attractive.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. Yeah,
so
a good point.
I mean, end
And
of
good.
like where's the Fed forecasting now? End of 2025 at 3%. So you
Yeah,
mean you're gonna want to be 2 years early just to
not
pick
me.
that up?
In
Uh,
the year 2025, if man is still alive. Anyway, it was 2525. Adam, Merry Christmas, bro.
well, Merry Christmas. We've got a
And
white Christmas. It snowed overnight here, so
and a
he's
happy new year. And I look forward to talking to you again in 2024. And my hope for you is it's your best year ever, not just in the markets, but in every way.
Dale. You have a great way with words. Thank you very much, and thanks to the community here, and I'm thankful for so many things this year. I'm trying to stay optimistic, so it should be a good one.
All right. Well, help me with that, will you? Anyway, thanks, Adam. Adam Button, everyone. You could follow him on Forex Live and on Twitter at FX_Button. One of the best news traders out there. So always great talking to you, and thanks for your views, bro. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
All
Merry
right.
Christmas. Happy New Year.
Adam Button, everybody. Okay, so let's see. It's 6, so in 15 minutes you could join Blake and the crew on the Morning Edge. Hope you enjoyed, Adam. Love talking to that guy, but I'll talk to anyone. Anyway, I'll see everyone tomorrow. Good luck today. Adios. Don't just count your pips, count your blessings.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with Forex Analytics. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.